To the elite, she was invisible, a maid in borrowed silk. To him, she was a bet. But when the orchestra paused and she sang, the room remembered what power really sounds like. This isn't a Cinderella makeover, it's a reckoning. Watch the night a hidden voice shattered a golden ceiling and turned a cruel dare into destiny. The private lounge of Lancaster Manor was filled with laughter, the sound of crystal glasses clinking against each other, and the warm golden glow of dim chandeliers reflecting off plush velvet seating. A group of young men lounged effortlessly, exuding natural arrogance. At the center sat Logan Carter, heir to the Lancaster real estate empire, a man who carried wealth as if it were a birthright, not just an inheritance. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips as he swirled the whiskey in his glass. "You can always tell who belongs and who doesn't," Logan mused, amusement lacing his voice. "It's in the way they move, the way they hesitate before taking a seat like they're waiting for permission." His best friend Daniel Remington chuckled, adjusting the gold cufflinks on his tailored suit. "Exactly, that's why charity galas are perfect. They're not really about giving back, it's about reminding people where they stand." The others laughed in agreement, nodding along as the conversation shifted to the upcoming gala, an exclusive event attended by politicians, CEOs, and old money elites. "Who are you bringing, Logan?" another friend, Benjamin Whitaker, asked, raising an eyebrow. "The Milan model or last month's actress?" Logan smirked, setting his glass down. "Neither. Too predictable." He leaned in slightly, his tone playful yet calculating. "Actually, I think I'll bring my maid." A heavy silence. Then the entire table erupted into laughter. Wait! You're serious?" Daniel gasped, wiping away tears of laughter. "You're actually going to show up with your maid? Oh, this is priceless. Why not?" Logan shrugged, playing up the absurdity of it. "Can you imagine the gasps, the whispers? It'll be legendary." "Come on," Benjamin scoffed, shaking his head. "No way you actually go through with it. You'd ruin your reputation." Daniel leaned in, eyes gleaming with amusement. 50 grand says you won't." Logan tilted his head, considering it for a moment, then grinned. "Done." From the corner of the room near the bar where she had been serving drinks, Clara James stood still, her hands tightening slightly around the tray she carried. She had learned to tune out most of what Logan and his friends said, but this she heard clearly. Her fingers curled involuntarily, but her face remained composed, her posture poised as if the words hadn't stung. For 2 years she had worked for the Lancaster family, keeping her head down, doing what was asked of her without complaint. She knew exactly what she was to them, a shadow, a background figure, someone meant to be invisible. But now she wasn't just invisible anymore. She was a joke. She exhaled quietly, schooling her expression before stepping forward and placing Logan's refreshed drink on the table with practiced grace. He barely glanced at her, too caught up in the thrill of his own ridiculous scheme. As she turned to leave, Daniel called after her, still grinning. "Hey, Clara, better start practicing how to curtsy. You're gonna be royalty for a night." More laughter. Clara said nothing. She simply walked away, her back straight, her head held high. But deep down, something inside her shifted. For a long time, Clara James understood that dreams were fragile things. They could shine brilliantly, filling someone with warmth and hope. But they could also shatter in an instant, leaving behind only the cold weight of reality. She had once been a child of music. Raised in a cramped apartment above a convenience store, her world had been small but full of song. Her mother would hum lullabies while cooking. Her father would whistle while fixing old furniture, and Clara would sing. Her voice was a gift so rare that it made people stop in their tracks even in the crowded streets of her neighborhood. When she sang, the world quieted. Her teachers noticed. A local music instructor saw the potential in her and offered to train her for free. At 15, she earned a scholarship to a prestigious music academy, a place where for the first time she felt she truly belonged. And then the accident happened. A rainy night. A A truck lost control, 2 lives were gone in an instant. Her scholarship couldn't feed Lucas Reed, her little brother. It couldn't pay rent. It couldn't keep the electricity on in their tiny home. So at 16, Clara left school. At 18, she became a maid. And from that moment on, she never sang again. Now at 22, she had learned to move through life without making ripples. She woke early, worked late, and sent nearly every penny home to Lucas, who had been left with permanent injuries from the accident. He couldn't walk without braces. And the medical bills never stopped. But still, she never complained. She never asked for anything. She simply endured. So when Logan Carter handed her an elegant invitation to the Lancaster Philanthropy Gala, Clara could only stare at it in disbelief. She stood frozen, gripping the card tightly. "What is this?" she asked cautiously. Logan smirked lazily, leaning against the marble countertop in the lavish kitchen of Lancaster Manor. "Exactly what it looks like. You're coming to the gala with me." Clara frowned, her fingers tightening around the invitation. "Why?" Logan shrugged. "Because it's an order. Be ready." He turned to leave, but Clara spoke again, her voice calm yet firm. "I don't belong there." Logan paused, turning back to her. "That's the point," he said smoothly. "You'll be the entertainment." A sharp pain twisted in Clara's chest like a dagger sinking deep, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she lowered her gaze and nodded. "Yes, sir." Logan smirked in satisfaction and walked away. Logan Carter had never known struggle. He had never worried about money, never wondered where his next meal would come from, never feared eviction medical bills or the crushing weight of responsibility. His father, Jonathan Sinclair, had built an empire from nothing, a real estate dynasty spanning luxury hotels, skyscrapers, and private resorts. Logan grew up in penthouse suites and elite private schools, surrounded by people who either worshipped or envied him. His father expected him to take over the family business one day, but Logan had never cared. Why should he? Everything was already his. He had no patience for lessons on hard work, no interest in earning anything himself. To him, money was a weapon, a shield, a game, and this ridiculous bet with Daniel, just another form of entertainment. After their conversation, Logan didn't think about Clara again. In the kitchen, Logan picked up his phone, texting his assistant. A stylist, a designer, and a personal shopper, all arranged to fix his maid. The idea of turning a servant into a socialite for a night was absurd, but just imagining Daniel's face when he actually followed through with the dare that made it all worth it. All day long, his phone buzzed with messages from his friends. "Daniel, bro, you're actually doing this." "Benjamin, this is going to be legendary." "Daniel, hope she doesn't try to steal the silverware." Logan laughed to himself, casually typing back smug replies. He wasn't worried. This was just a joke, a fleeting amusement, nothing more. Across town, Clara stood in front of a full-length mirror in an upscale boutique, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The dress. It was like nothing she had ever worn. A deep sapphire blue fitted at the bodice, hugging her slender frame before flowing into cascading waves of silk, shimmering, weightless, like it belonged to someone from another world. Her hair, always tied back in a simple ponytail, now fell in soft waves, framing her face. Her skin glowed under the delicate touch of makeup. Her lips painted a bold shade of red. Too bold, too unfamiliar. For a fleeting moment, she wasn't a maid. She was just a girl in a beautiful dress. Serena Whitmore, an elegant woman in her 40s, took a step back, admiring her work. "You clean up well," she said approvingly. Clara swallowed hard, her throat tight. She didn't know how to respond. She turned slightly, looking at herself from different angles. How long had it been since she wore something beautiful? How many years? She had once been a girl with dreams. But the woman in the mirror, she had nothing. Nothing but a borrowed dress and a cruel joke hanging over her head. Clara exhaled slowly, pushing the memory away. This wasn't a fairy tale. She knew exactly why she was here. Clara turned away from the mirror, her expression unreadable. "I'm ready," she said quietly. The Lancaster Philanthropy Gala, a spectacle of wealth disguised as charity. The Regency Ballroom of Wellington Grand Hotel glittered under golden chandeliers. The air was heavy with expensive perfume and aged wine. Women in designer gowns clutched champagne flutes, their laughter crisp and calculated. Men in tailored suits exchanged firm handshakes, their conversations layered with unspoken power plays. And into this world, Clara James stepped, an outsider, draped in borrowed elegance. Her hands clenched at her sides as she walked beside Logan, her heart pounding against her ribs. The moment they entered, conversations faltered. Eyes flickered toward her, scanning, assessing, judging. And then the whispers followed, soft yet sharp enough to cut. Who is she? Logan Carter brought a maid. Must be some charity case. How amusing. Clara kept her face composed, even though every part of her wanted to shrink under their scrutiny. Logan, on the other hand, looked entirely at ease, his usual smug confidence unwavering. He led her forward, a glass of whiskey in one hand, the other lightly resting on her back, a gesture that seemed like guidance. But Clara knew better. This wasn't protection. This was a display, a performance. Logan leaned in, his voice dripping with amusement. "Relax," he murmured with a smirk. "You're making history tonight." Clara didn't respond. "This is no surprise at all." She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, as she and Logan descended the grand staircase into Regency Ballroom. A familiar voice rang out. "Well, well, look what the wind blew in." Daniel Remington stood near the bar, smirking as he took a slow sip of his drink. He looked Clara up and down, his gaze lingering just long enough to be insulting. "Logan, you actually did it." Logan grinned, clinking his glass against Daniel's. "Told you I never back down from a challenge." Benjamin Whitaker, another member of their elite circle, let out a low chuckle. "Damn, I almost feel bad. She actually looks like she believes she belongs here." A twist of nausea churned in Clara's stomach, but she didn't let it show. Never. Now, gentlemen," a smooth, authoritative voice interrupted. Isabella Monroe, the event's host and a highly influential socialite, stepped into their circle. A woman of power and poise, draped in a gown worth more than an average worker's annual salary. She barely spared Clara a glance before turning to Logan, her tone silken. "A bold choice, darling." Her painted lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "But I suppose every gala needs its entertainment." Laughter rippled through the group. Logan merely shrugged, smirking as he lifted his glass in mock acknowledgement. Clara remained composed, though the weight of humiliation pressed heavy on her chest like a stone. Then Daniel, emboldened by the moment, leaned in slightly, his voice laced with mockery. "Tell me, Clara, do you prefer serving appetizers or clearing tables? Since you're doing neither tonight, I imagine it must feel strange." Another round of laughter. Clara inhaled slowly. "Steady yourself, don't waver." She turned to Daniel, meeting his gaze directly. And then instead of breaking, instead of showing an ounce of shame, she smiled. Not a forced, awkward smile. A calm, poised, unwavering smile. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I've come to realize that a person's true character is revealed in how they treat those who serve them." Daniel's smug grin flickered. Isabella Monroe raised an eyebrow. Guests exchanged glances. Logan, who had expected her to shrink away, suddenly found himself intrigued. But before anyone could respond, the evening's host took the imperial stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice echoed across the ballroom, "as part of tonight's charity initiative, we have a special opportunity for entertainment. A performance slot has been reserved for any willing guest who would like to contribute their talents in the name of philanthropy." A murmur spread through the room. This was unexpected. And then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice called out, "I nominate Logan's guest." A cruel chuckle followed. Others quickly joined in the suggestion, spreading like wildfire. "What a wonderful idea." Isabella Munro's eyes gleamed with amusement. She turned to Clara, her voice as smooth as silk. "Clara, darling, do tell us what is your talent." Clara's pulse roared in her ears. She glanced at Logan, hoping he would step in, stop this before it went too far. Instead, he leaned in, his lips close to her ear, his tone lazy, taunting. Might as well give them a show. A choice. Clara could refuse, could shrink away and let them win. Or she could rise. Her breath was unsteady, but she lifted her chin. Her voice was quiet, yet firm as steel. "I'll sing." A hush fell over the room. The laughter faded. The entire ballroom held its breath. A stagehand quickly arranged a microphone. The orchestra waited. Clara stepped forward. Her heart pounded. The stage lights momentarily blinded her, but she steadied herself. She inhaled deeply, and then she sang. The room fell into utter silence. The ballroom stood deathly still as Clara stepped onto the imperial stage. Hundreds of eyes bore down on her, heavy, expectant, amused, waiting for inevitable humiliation. She could feel it, the sneers barely hidden behind champagne flutes, the hushed whispers of mockery. And yet, as she stood there, hands trembling slightly at her sides, she felt something deeper. A memory. Another stage. Another time. She was 16. Standing before a grand piano in a modest recital hall, her heart pounding not with fear, but with excitement. Her parents sat in the front row, their smiles warm, their pride unmistakable. "Sing from here, mi amor," her mother had said, pressing a gentle hand to Clara's chest. From the heart. That's where music truly lives. Clara closed her eyes. And then she sang. The first note hung in the air like a single drop of rain before a storm. Then came the next. And the next. Her voice, rich, operatic, powerful, soared through the vast ballroom, filling every corner with haunting beauty. The laughter died instantly. All the amusement, all the mockery vanished. In its place, shock, awe, a raw, undeniable emotion, something they couldn't control. That voice. It didn't belong to a maid. It belonged to a star. Her soprano notes soared, pure, powerful, piercing through every listener's soul. Every note carried pain. Every note carried stolen dreams. Every note carried a past left behind. She wasn't just singing for them. She was singing for herself, for the girl she used to be, for the girl who once believed she could have it all before the world took it away. The room blurred. A flicker of memory, her mother swaying to the music. In the kitchen, laughter rang out as Clara twirled beside her mother. Flash. Her father, his calloused hands clapping along as he watched her practice, pride glowing in his eyes. Flash herself at 16, standing before the mirror at the music academy, believing she had a future. And now this moment. Her voice rose to its peak, reaching a breathtaking, heart-wrenching final note. Then silence. No one moved. And then a sound. A single sharp inhale from somewhere in the crowd, followed by a quiet sniffle. Clara opened her eyes, breathless, nearly exhausted. Tears glistened in the eyes of the guests, the same ones who had mocked her only minutes ago. Even Isabella Munro, who had once looked at her with nothing but amusement, now regarded her with something entirely different, respect. But the most striking reaction of all came from Jonathan Sinclair, Logan's father, the man known for his unwavering composure. The man who built an empire with a mind that never faltered now sat completely motionless, his hand resting lightly against his lips, his sharp, calculating eyes now glossy with emotion. Logan, standing beside him, was utterly frozen. His usual arrogance had evaporated, replaced by something unrecognizable. For the first time in his life, Logan Carter was speechless. The moment stretched heavy, unbreakable. Then applause. A single clap from the back of the room, hesitant at first, then another and another, until the entire ballroom erupted into a standing ovation. Clara stood there stunned. The same people who had looked down on her now applauded her, as if she were royalty. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Isabella Munro stepped forward smoothly, adjusting her extravagant gown before speaking. "Well," she said. Her expression was unreadable at first, then it softened. "My dear," she continued, her voice warmer than ever before, "talent like yours should never go unnoticed, and it certainly should not be wasted." She glanced toward Jonathan Sinclair, who gave a silent nod of approval. And then Isabella Munro made her announcement. "Therefore, I would like to personally offer you a full scholarship to Whitmore Academy of Arts." A ripple of whispers spread through the room, but she wasn't finished. She glanced at Jonathan Sinclair before adding, "And it seems Mr. Sinclair is willing to sponsor your entire training should you accept." Clara's breath caught. She thought she had misheard. A scholarship. A chance to train professionally. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, grounding herself in reality. This wasn't a dream. This was real. Slowly she turned toward Logan. Their eyes met, and in his, not arrogance, not mockery, something else. Shame, awe, or something even deeper. She didn't know. She should have felt victorious, but she didn't. She only felt free. With trembling hands, Clara nodded. "I accept." And for the first time in years, Clara James allowed herself to believe in a future beyond survival. Logan sat there stunned. The thunderous applause still echoed in his ears, but the world around him blurred. The glittering chandeliers, the lavish ballroom, the murmurs of admiration, all of it suddenly distant, meaningless. Except for her, Clara. She stood on the imperial stage, poised yet trembling, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, not of sadness, but of something far deeper, liberation. Logan had brought her here as a joke. He had expected humiliation, laughter at her expense. Instead, she had commanded the entire room, left them breathless, and walked away with an opportunity most could only dream of. And he, for the first time in his life, Logan Carter, felt small. The weight of his own cruelty settled over him like an unbearable force. He had paraded her in front of these people like a spectacle, treated her as if she were nothing. But now they all knew the truth. She wasn't nothing. She was extraordinary. Logan barely registered the guests swarming around her, their previous scorn replaced with admiration. He could only stand there stunned, watching as his father, Jonathan Sinclair, rose from his seat and walked toward Clara. Logan tensed. His father was a man of few words, a symbol of power and judgment. His approval was rare, reserved only for those who truly deserved it. And now he was giving it to her. "You have an extraordinary talent." His voice was deep, steady, but warm. "It would be a shame for it to go to waste." Clara met his gaze, still wary, still guarded. But finally she gave a small nod. "Thank you, Mr. Sinclair." Logan exhaled slowly. His father had never looked at him like that. Not once. The whispers in the room began to shift. Journalists had already begun typing furiously on their phones. The elite murmured about the spectacle they had just witnessed. And by the next morning, the headlines flooded the news. "The Knight and Angel sang among wolves." From Maid to star, Clara James stuns the entire ballroom. Logan Carter's wager backfires as the underdog rises. Logan clenched his jaw. The truth sank in. This wasn't just a story. This was her story. And he had become the villain. But what haunted Logan wasn't the public reaction. It was her voice. That night he couldn't get her performance out of his head. Couldn't escape the shame clawing at his chest. Finally, it became unbearable. He had to make this right. That afternoon, he found Clara in the garden of Lancaster Manor. She sat on a bench, her posture relaxed yet unreadable. She had changed out of the breathtaking gown back into the simple clothes of her reality. And yet, she still carried that same grace. Logan hesitated before stepping closer. Clara. His voice was quieter than usual. She glanced at him, waiting. Logan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck, a rare sign of unease. Look, I know I was an ass. No worse than that. I treated you like you weren't even a person. He paused. And I'm sorry. Clara studied him for a long moment before letting out a quiet breath. Are you... Logan blinked. What do you mean? Are you sorry for what you did? She asked, her voice calm but sharp. Or just sorry that everyone saw it? The question hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to say he truly regretted everything, that he had realized the depth of his mistakes. But the truth was, he wasn't sure. His world had always revolved around status, power, and amusement at others' expense. And now, for the first time, he was questioning all of it. But Clara didn't owe him forgiveness, and she had no intention of giving it just because he asked. She stood meeting his gaze directly. You don't get to say sorry and erase what happened. I don't need your guilt, Logan. I got what I needed from last night. Logan swallowed hard, nodding slowly. I understand. Clara tilted her head slightly as if assessing whether he truly did, and then she smiled, a small, almost sad smile. She turned and walked away. Logan remained frozen, watching as she disappeared down the garden path, and for the first time in his life, he felt the full weight of who he had been. Empty, shallow, a man who had never done a single meaningful thing. And now he didn't know if he could change. But for the first time, he wanted to try. Golden light bathed the grand opera house. The air buzzed with anticipation. The audience, dressed in their finest, whispered in hushed excitement, waiting for the night's star performer. Backstage, Clara James stood before a mirror, adjusting the shimmering gown that now felt like a second skin. It had been months since that fateful night at the Lancaster Gala. Months of rigorous training, sleepless nights, unwavering dedication. And now she was here. She stepped onto the imperial stage, her heart steady, her purpose clear. As the first notes of the orchestra swelled, she closed her eyes, and she sang. The sound was no longer hesitant, no longer burdened by doubt. It soared, filling every corner of the grand hall with breathtaking emotion. In the very last row of the darkened theater, Logan Carter sat in silence. No VIP seat, no spotlight, no desire to be seen. For once, this wasn't about him. He had come simply to listen. As Clara reached the final note, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. They rose to their feet. And in that fleeting moment, as the curtain began to fall, Clara lifted her gaze toward the back of the room. She saw him. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But for a fleeting second, their eyes met. And in that brief moment, Logan saw everything. Not resentment, not pity, just acknowledgement. And then she turned away, stepping into the light of her future. The curtain of the imperial stage fell. And as Clara's story came to a close, we are reminded of a powerful truth. Greatness is not defined by where we come from, but by the strength within us. She was never just a maid, never just a joke. She was always meant for something greater. And in the end, she didn't need revenge. She didn't need validation. She simply rose above. And as for Logan, maybe just maybe, that night didn't just change her life. It changed his, too. Clara didn't need revenge or recognition. She simply let her talent speak for itself. But if you were Logan, what would you do? Have you ever realized you were wrong and tried to make it right? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. If this story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to spread the message of perseverance, self-worth, and rising above adversity. Thank you for supporting the channel. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared with the intention of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any mistakes, kindly overlook them with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.